1 million people die, it's a statistic. One person dies, it's a tragedy, and I don't think we should lose sight of the tragedy.
Death to those who tell the world they are out to wreck the American democratic system. I am the strength of the people of the free world.
I have a memory of him when we were in Japan, living on the Air Force Base. Oh dear.
I can remember him when he went, the last day when he left the house.
Get rid of these. Hi, Dad. Him being at the bottom of the stairs and I'm in his arms.
In his flight uniform.
And he's saying goodbye to us.
That's the way I saw him the last time.
That's pretty much the only real memory I have of my father.
When historians look at war, we sometimes look at the large picture and the small picture. Large picture are economic forces, ideologies, and so forth. But to make war real, or the understanding the experience, it's often vital to look at the lives of individuals.
One of those individuals was Joe Campos, known to all as Joe. Joe was born in eastern Arizona mining country in 1919. Like many, his roots span both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border.
What that tells us about a broader thing, about American society, about the role of ethnic minorities there, and the consequences of war on the lives of individuals.
It's almost like a Greek tragedy. A prodigal son goes off to defend his nation.
He served in the European theater of the Second World War. Then he returned to Miami, Arizona.
The starting of a new life, marrying someone that you loved and you would want to spend the rest of your life with. We had our daughter and he was working.
And he comes back and is not comfortable with what he saw. And he probably experienced what I experienced, because it was a totally segregated community.
Growing up in school and learning things about history, you think about the South and segregation. When I moved to Globe, Miami, and started talking to people here and reading history and immersing myself in the history of the area, I learned that there was significant segregation here. This school was segregated from 1923 to 1950-51, so it was Mexican American and Native American kids only.
And from school, the next experience was on weekends, going to the movie house, pay for my ticket, but Bobby up to the balcony. Weren't permitted to sit on the main floor. If I wanted to go swimming with my buddies, we could go swimming at the local YMCA, but only on the day before the water was drained. So everywhere we turned as Mexicanos, we confronted that.
After returning from the war, Joe set about making a life in his hometown. That meant taking a job in the mines.
When I heard the story of what he had experienced in the mines,
it meant really a source of employment jobs, but even that was at a distinct disadvantage because they had a dual wage system where Mexicanos were paid less than whites. There was an indoors change room for the white miners and an outdoors separate change room for the Mexicanos. I did not want to place myself in that humiliating experience. I wanted to get away from that.
Revelis would never work the mines.
I thought that joining the military would be a way to escape that kind of environment.
Joe Campos, however, gave it a shot for the sake of his family. He lasted a year.
I can well imagine what he was going through. To be working at a place where you weren't even accepted, never really told me about it, but you could tell that he was unhappy.
Campos decided to re-enlist, perhaps like Reveles, to escape a town that didn't accept him.
I don't think anybody was particularly aware of what was brewing in Korea.
He had already been transferred to Japan.
So Jenny and I left in November of '49. We joined him. We got there in about the 15th of December, which was a very happy time for him.
The U.S. Air Force stationed in Japan initiated a series of flights, reconnaissance to see what was happening because there was chaos on the ground. The South Korean capital fell within days of the North Korean invasion.
He was an aerial gunner on a B-26, and his crew made one of the first reconnaissance missions crossing into North Korea.
Almost all these were World War II era bombers.
This is what a lot of our airmen were flying, old, tired airplanes. And on their return to the Air Force Base in Japan then is when that B-26 encountered technical difficulties and then crashed into the Yellow Sea.
It wasn't too long that they came knocking on my door and telling me that Joe was missing.
For 2 weeks, Campos was listed as missing. During this time, combat started on the ground.
Until finally they just admitted it that he was gone.
Private Kenny Shadrick, seen here moments before his death by North Korean machine gun fire, was killed July 5, 1950. He was the first U.S. infantryman reported dead, but Staff Sergeant Joe Campos died in a plane crash on June 28th of the same year.
It's hard to know the exact hour, moment, timing of it, but clearly his death preceded the deaths of Americans on the ground.
To this day, Shadrick is widely considered the first American killed in the Korean War.
To think that he was one of the first to have died, in this just 2 days of the war.
Why do we owe it to Joe Campos to set the record straight?
How tragic that there was a Joe Campos that was among the first to sacrifice his life at a time when society did not fully embrace the values that he brought and could have brought had he continued to live.
These were one set of dog tags, but these were not the dog tags that were recovered when after the plane crash in the peninsula.
Yeah.
So,
but they were his. So
yes.
All of that can be added. I mean, it just makes for a more interesting exhibit.
And I'll keep the letters.
The formerly segregated Bullion Plaza School in Miami is now a museum and cultural center, open to all. Tom Foster is working on a Joe Campos exhibit.
It's sort of strange to bring something that has been a private affair out into the public. I think you sometimes wonder, well, of what significance really is it in the long term to future generations? But it's the same way as me. looking and touring this museum and seeing the remains or the artifacts of other people's lives, and I'm as impressed with their stories as I suppose other people will be impressed with the story of my father.
See, this is really a nice display piece for the case.
Well, I think every group wants to grab part of that story, that they're not latecomers, they're not outsiders, but they're part of the foundations of America.
There's many, many things that happened here that aren't necessarily pretty, but it's history. That's the most important part of history, maintaining it, realizing it, experiencing it, and disseminating it. Giving it to other people so they can see, so we don't make the same mistakes we did before.